What's up my guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justin Davis. Today we're going to do an honest review of the Eachine Wizard TS130. This is the little brother to the previous Wizard that I reviewed on the channel, the TS215. Some of you guys might have bought that one. If you want to get one that matches, say you want to have something a little smaller, a little more portable, a 3-inch quad is kind of a cool thing to have. It flies a lot different than the micro brushless with a lot more power involved with the 3-inch. Components on board also are a little bit cheaper to run than the bigger brother 5-inch race quads. So if you're looking to get something sort of mid-size, a 130 is a good place to go. Now also, to make it a little more valuable for this video, I'm going to also compare it to the Diatone quad that I reviewed a few days ago on the channel. Also probably maybe quad of the year as far as 3-inch race quads go. But the TS130, good news guys, this actually flies extremely well, and I'm also rocking those new HQ props on here, and these are 3x3s. They're even a little lower pitch than the 3x4s that I used on the Diatone R349 sitting to the right there. So we're going to do a little bit of a video comparison. I'll show you video of both of these, and I'm also going to show you some line of sight flight footage of this little 4S beast. I think you guys are going to be pretty impressed with it. I think the price is pretty decent at $129. It's $10 cheaper. It's also PNP, which means you're going to have to add your own receiver on here. And I put the antennas down on the arms just like that. And I've been doing that a lot lately just to keep them out of the way from a top crash. Now, someone asked me the other day about that sticking up off the top. This is a larger zip tie, and I used a smaller one, but it broke off. So there's kind of a questionable spot to put this dipole because they had it just kind of loosely hang off the back and it'll get chopped off. You might be able to run it down underneath and have it hanging out the bottom, but the battery might get in the way. So really the only place you could put that antenna is just strikingly off the top like that. Use the larger zip tie. It's not going to break the antenna, it's going to break the zip tie first. So don't worry about sticking straight up off the top. You're going to get your best reception with it sitting in that particular spot. So if it does break this, it might just only pull the UFL connector off the top of the VTX, and then you can just snap it back on. So don't worry about it breaking. It's just, all it is a wire. As long as it doesn't go into your props, you're good to go. But this is going to take most of the brunt of the impact anyway. The heat shrink will save your dipole, and it likely won't get cut. But without further ado guys, if you'd like to join up with the Drone Camp's Patreon channel, download the Patreon app to your phone, sign up to be a Patreon of the channel, and you can get involved in our community chats, ask me questions directly and message me. Super cool. We're also giving away Eachine trash can at the end of the month and an Emax Tinyhawk. Super awesome quads here. And the trash can that we're giving away has been upgraded with the XT30 mods and a new antenna on there. It's a super sweet quad. So without further ado, again, let's go ahead and do some flying with this bad boy. I think you guys are going to love it. We'll come back in the studio afterwards. We'll take a little closer look at the components on it, and I will show you what's good on it and what I don't like. So pros and cons evaluation and a little bit of Betaflight for you guys that want to see how I have mine set up versus other guys out there. Here we go guys. All right guys, let's go ahead and get the TS130 up in the air. I got those new HQ 3x3 props on there this time. A little lower profile than the 3x4s that I flew the other day. So let's check it out. The initial spool up sounds pretty good. Let's bring it in a little closer. And I'm hoping this one performs almost as, you know, somewhere as good as the Diatone. This one actually might be even a little bit faster. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Because this one has a little larger motors on there. So you might even get a little bit more power out of this total power setup here. This is looking pretty good so far. Yaw feels good, roll and pitch feel good. Got a nice rate set up on there. This is stock. I'm flying it just how it comes outside the box. I didn't do anything else except add my switches on my transmitter, and that's it. And it sounds actually really good on these props. I tried it on the other props and it sounded like there was a little bit of vibration. Look at that. Just try not to land it in the mud puddle over there. Those yellow props are really easy to see line of sight. Let's do some rainbow action here. Did a little variation on the rainbow. Threw some twists in there, some flips. Rainbow is just simply when you go over like that, stop, back the other way. Man, it's getting really small up there. I'm gonna bring it back. Turns into a silhouette on those really overcast days. I'm liking the way this feels though. I think it's gonna FPV pretty good. And if I have to do any PID tuning on it, I will share it with you guys as always. Whatever changes if I decide to make it fly better. Let's go ahead and put a 4S850 on there. I think the 4S850 will be a good size for this quad. But since the motors are just a little bit bigger than the Diatone 3-inch 349, this will also handle a 4S1300 on there. So we'll try both today. It might fly a little bit heavier with that 4S1300, but I'll see where the sweet spot is for you guys. Here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and test out the TS130, and let's put it through all the paces that I normally do on the channel. Let's fly the crap out of this 130 and see what it can handle. A little bit of a kind of modified split S over the trees there with a little loop back around the telephone pole. Seeing a little bit of breakup in the dipole antenna around the far side of the field. And that's to be expected with all of this metal I have around. Trying to freak that flight controller out. It doesn't seem like I can do it. I'm looking for some type of prop wash, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of prop wash in my hard maneuvers when I'm coming back around on a yaw snap or any type of roll. Everything seems to be pretty locked in on this flight controller. The Omnibus F4 is kind of one of my old school favorites, so I'm really used to this flight controller, and actually trying something new there. I've never even seen anybody do that move, but we can make things up as we go along. That's kind of a fun power loop, almost like a knife edge type of loop or something back under this little string right there that's really hard to see, but with this camera I can see it there. So back over this pole again for a little loop and a dive back down the pole. Let's try out some low flying with it, close and low to the ground. If you're going to use this for racing, you're obviously going to have a power advantage over a lot of people. These motors are quite a bit bigger than you would find on a lot of other 3-inch race quads. And I have tons of control here. If you're hitting gates with it, no problem. Let's see if we can do a big power loop back through that soccer goal. Came up a little bit short there, a little bit long actually. Back over it again. Really feeling the way this flies, very predictable, and I feel like I can get away with a lot with this quad. So right now I'm at a really comfortable point with this quad, and that's what I'm going to test out, a lot of low to the ground stuff. Once I get it up in the air, I like to bring it back down a little closer to the ground, back under these trees. There's a lot of ghost branches out in the winter. It's crazy hard to see those branches. You got to come really close to the ground to avoid all those. And I'm on the back side of these trees right here, so you're gonna expect some interference. I've got an awesome Foxeer 8 dB patch antenna on my goggles, so it's definitely not my goggles. But I'm also pumping out 200 milliwatt. And let's check out the Diatone R349 so you can see a little bit of comparison. So let's go ahead and start off with a little line of sight flight for you, and a punch out right there. The punch out's almost completely gone with the R349. It's pretty good. It also flies extremely locked in out of the box. You're gonna expect something that does not have vibrations or problems with jitters with the flight controller with this particular setup. It's set up perfect and factory tuned. So you're also gonna get a little better quality control on the Diatone quads. And this was my first pack I'm sharing with you guys, just in comparison between these two quads, because a lot of you guys are going to ask, which one should I get? Should I get the Diatone or should I get the Eachine TS130? There's a lot of fans of the Wizard series out there, so the Wizard's not to disappoint. The TS130 is a really, really awesome quad, but I think the 349NX might actually be a little more locked in as far as a smooth flight characteristic goes. This one I trust a little more closer to the ground, and I feel like I have just a more locked in experience and a little more predictable The TS130 can be dialed back quite a bit. You can dial it back and make it softer, make it more resilient. But you know what? Also, it is flying that Omnibus F4 SD on board, which is one of my old school favorites, like I've said before on the channel. But again, the 349 was absolutely oppressive on all angles. Durability factor is really good on that one. The carbon looks great. All the components on board. The TX200 is not my favorite VTX in the world. I think there's better ones out there, but 200 milliwatt is great. And I think the camera on the 349NX looks a little better than the Foxeer Aero Pro that's on the TS130. So yeah, in my opinion, I think this camera looks a little bit better. And I'll go back to the TS130 in a minute, and I'll show you the comparison of that one versus this one. And this is an overcast day, so wherever you are in the United States is pretty much how this camera is going to look for most of you guys in those winter days. Didn't need to do any tuning on this camera to make it see the darks and lights. It's a very fast camera too, so your shadows and everything will pretty much stay locked in wherever you go, underneath the trees or over top of them. But I love the way that the 349NX flies. Like I said, I think this might be quad of the year for the 3-inch race quads. I absolutely love this one. I gave it a super high rating. The punch out is actually insane. That was the punch out on this quad. It is super boosty. And this, I also said, could be a quad that if I flew it every day, my skills would advance a lot. Because there, again, I'm throwing that flight controller around. Because it flies awesome. It just really does lock in. And look at that. I'm just trying to make it trip up and give me some vibes there. And it's handling everything I threw at it. All kinds of spins, dives. That's a good test right there. Low back to the ground. See if there's any prop wash, which there wasn't. Even experimenting on some new type of kind of maneuvers around these light poles. And I can see fairly good with this camera underneath there. Probably a little bit better than the TS130 camera. I can really see that piece of string hanging across that volleyball net. They left that there for us to hit. And now we're back on the TS130, guys. You can see the difference in the camera. Do you see the difference? If you just back up the video just a little bit and go backwards and check out that R349 camera. That's that micro, I believe it was the Micro Swift, Runcam Micro Swift. This one just looks a little bit muddier. It could have a little bit of maybe water on my lens. It just looks a little washed out compared to the other camera. But I have a solid performer with the TS130. Like I said, this is a little more like a muscle car. I think that this one feels more loose on the sticks versus the other one. The other one had close to the same rates, around 75. I usually don't go above 75 or 80 because it starts to feel a little bit too loose. If you're brand new to FPV, I would make sure your super rates are down somewhere around 70. You can even lower it more if you want to have a little softer stick feel, not so twitchy. Back around those trees. Yeah, there's just a little bit of dampness on the front of the camera right here. I see there's a little spot right in the middle, but right here I'm testing out some low, fast proximity around those trees. And I could actually use a little more camera tilt because those motors, man, the 1506s are crazy. They're super, super fast. So speed is what you're looking for. Get the TS130. You're going to go very, very fast with this one. Probably more speed than you can actually handle. You can throw all the throttle at this quad that you want. But it also handles really well low to the ground. I'm testing out some of that right here because we're only a couple feet off the ground, maybe a foot at some points. Back around that tree there with some kind of experimental flip. Almost flew into the tree. And back underneath in this long row right here just to see if I could stay under without hitting too much throttle and back up. See that boost? It's crazy. Really, really nice boost on this quad. Tons of control. I think it's a pretty good value for around $130 that this one's priced for. So decent price, flies good. Quality control could be a little bit better. But overall, a pretty nice quad for the price. So let's go ahead and set this one down, and let's go back into the studio and let's check out the TS130 on the bench, and I'll show you what's on board the super beastie muscle car TS130. Here we go. Alright guys, welcome back from the flight test. You know what? The TS130 surprised me. I felt like this quad was going to be a dud. Whenever I get anything in from Eachine, my caution flags go up. I'm very cautious about the components on board. I just assume that everything is as cheap as possible is thrown on the frame, and just to get a product on the website. Sometimes I really don't trust the Eachine brand, but here in the past 3 months, they've been really impressing me with some of the extra components that they're adding on their quads. And what I'm talking about is adding on things like the Foxeer Micro Aero Pro that's on there, a really nice camera, and it's a name brand camera, which is really nice. We also have a 200 milliwatt smart audio switchable video transmitter on here, which is really nice. It does have that smaller UFL connector, which I'm not a huge fan of. I'd like to see an MMCX style connector on there. Those don't usually pop off as easy as these do, but if you want, you can actually take a little bit of hot glue, put a little dab of hot glue on there, because you only have 3 bolts on that top 2mm plate, which is super nice. Now also, you notice that I added a capacitor on here, and you can add anything up to around, this one is a 330. You could add something in that range. Just make sure it doesn't make contact with that pole in the back, and bring it off the back end like that. It'll clean up the video on that VTX a lot. One other thing about this particular frame, it is a unibody, 3mm on the bottom, very similar to the Diatone one, but this one's been sort of hydrographic dipped, and this one is just pure carbon fiber. But the carbon on this one looks pretty decent, and I talked about this before, I love all the hardware that Diatone does. As far as design-wise, Diatone wins pretty much all the awards out there, in my opinion. Originally, I'm a graphic designer, and I really like the way that they design their stuff. All the lines are really clean. The carbon looks extra awesome, and use this colored motor wire, which is great. Now, there's a little bit of a difference between these two. I love the way this one flies. That F4 flight controller on the Diatone R349 is super locked in. I love it. It is like a BMW, a stick shift through the mountains. It is absolutely beautiful the way it flies. The TS130, however, man, you know what? The TS130 is like a muscle car. Even though this one is smooth and feels like a luxury car, this thing right here is balls to the wall. That first battery that I had with that blew my mind, because what we have on this one versus the Diatone R349 is just a bigger power system. They threw huge motors on this. These are the Eachine branded, these were 1508s, I believe. Yeah, 1507, 4100 kV motors. These things are gigantic. They don't have the best coils, the best looking coils in here, but the magnets feel super notchy. So that means they used a really high quality magnet. They're really strong magnets, and they give a really nice, insane punch out. The power to weight ratio on a 4S50 is where you want to be on this quad as well. Probably the only thing I don't like about these motors is that they use clockwise and counterclockwise threaded posts. I really hate when they do that, because when I was trying to remove a prop a couple days ago, I moved the nut the wrong way. I tightened it super hard, and it was almost impossible to get off. I thrashed a prop trying to get these nuts off. If you have a quad that is a smaller quad like this, I would suggest getting yourself a motor wrench, because if you put a pair of pliers on this motor, you'll damage the bell. You need to hold this little motor solid in place while you're taking those extra large nuts off there. They are the taller nuts, they're not low profile, which I also like, because the wrench doesn't fly off as well as easily. We use a full-size strap on here, and I just borrowed an HGLRC strap, and I have that piece of plastic down bottom here. One thing I'm going to recommend that you guys do, if you buy this quad, absolutely, for sure, 100%, put Loctite on these bolts. I had one of the motors actually fly off this quad. Yeah, so I was flying it, and all of a sudden it felt like something wasn't right, and I'm really perceptive to flying RC airplanes, helis, and quads. It's my whole life. So I could tell something was going wrong. And sure enough, maybe 5 seconds later, and usually what I do is I come back and land. And all of a sudden, I thought maybe the battery got yanked. It started to tumble really violently, and then the battery ejected and the video went out. So yeah, one of the motors flew off and I had to put new bolts on. It was this motor right here on this side. So you can see those bolts are different than the ones on the right hand side. Those are flat. These are a little taller, but they are the same size bolts. But I'm going to recommend that you go over the entire quad with a driver. Wherever you have a metal to metal connection is where you need to add some blue Loctite. Even on these top bolts on the top frame, this back bolt right here vibrated loose on me, and the whole top plate was just wiggling around. So one problem that I did not have on the Diatone quad, so all the Diatone hardware is actually pre-Loctited on there. So everything is all set up with Loctite on it from Diatone. So that's probably another pro versus some of your Eachine branded stuff. A lot of that does not come Loctited. So double check all of your bolts. I'm pretty sure that none of these bolts have Loctite on them. And I'll just take off one of the bolts and show you really quickly while I've got you here. Yeah, so see that? No Loctite on those bolts. And let's just double check Diatone for a quality control check here. You know, $10 more for this quad, and I'll put the link down below. Yeah, so there is Loctite on the Diatone quad. So that shows you one thing that Eachine probably needs to address in their builds when they're sending you guys a quad that's pre-built. Very good idea to have some Loctite on your motor nuts, otherwise you will have a catastrophic failure. All 4 bolts flew out. Can you believe that? All 4 bolts vibrated out. And I was only about a minute into the flight. So it happened really fast. And that can happen on any quad out there. So, but like I said, if you would like to have some more power, go for the TS130. This one is going to give you all the power you want and then some. It's actually surprising. I was really having a lot of fun. It was like being on a roller coaster in like a theme park. This thing was just all jazzed up on my 4S 850, and I was getting above 3-minute flight times, even punching around the throttle. I think these HQ props with this lower pitch is definitely going to be a little more efficient for your quad. So if you want more power, go with the TS130 over the Diatone R349. A little better quality for that price, probably a little smoother on this flight controller, but both of these flight controllers actually do perform pretty well, because I threw a lot at this one to try to get it to mess up, maybe do some flopping around, try to get that flight controller to freak out for you guys, and it never did. So it's a pretty locked in flying quad. But let me go ahead and plug it into Betaflight for you guys. I'll show you some of the setup inside Betaflight that I set up, and you guys can apply that to your TS130. All right guys, we're inside Betaflight now, and we do have firmware on here that is Omnibus F4 SD version, and it is actually 3.5.5, so it looks like a pretty recent version of Betaflight. If your quad is sitting on the bench and it looks kind of screwy like this, you can reset the Z-axis by clicking that button, and then it's going to be the right orientation. Check your orientation before you fly it for the first time, and like I always say, do your first flight test line of sight. That's really important. Now we have 3 different UARTs here, and we have UART 6 active right there for our XM Plus. And over in the configuration tab, guys, we have DShot 600. I have 6 for the motor idle value so that we don't get any flips of death. If that's not there on yours, if it says 4.5, change it to 6. And turn motor stop off right there. That's going to be super important. You can see that the gyro is running 8K there. We only have the accelerometer active because we don't have barometer or magnetometer. I do have my maximum arm angle set to 180 there, so I can rearm it if I'm stuck in a branch and I want to kind of spin the motors and try to rip it out of a branch. And my personalization is set to TS130 there for the name of the quad. We have serial-based receiver, SpecSat S-Bus, and S-Bus down here as the serial receiver provider. So that's going to make sure that your XM Plus is active. And also in the other features, we only have a few things active here. We have telemetry, OSD, anti-gravity, and dynamic filter. And for your D-Shot beacon configuration, if you want the ESCs to chirp on a switch, you can do that. TX is turned off for the signal lost. Yes, you want that, obviously. If you have a total failure or you have signal loss, maybe your receiver becomes disconnected. Speaking of receiver becoming disconnected, that's also another quirk about this quad. The receiver comes plugged into the flight controller in the very back right here. And if I bring it just a little bit closer, you might notice that, if I can get it to go in focus, I have a dab of hot glue right there, because the receiver was actually vibrating loose and the quad was falling out of the air on my first flight test. So before you go out and fly yours, put a little dab of hot glue on that. Push it as far in as it'll go, and that will make sure it doesn't vibrate out. Super important. All this down here, you can turn some of this off if you want to. Some of that you don't need. The power and battery configuration, we have minimum cell voltage set to 2.9, warning cell voltage set to 3 right there, and you can leave your maximum at 4.3. For a failsafe, we always have it set to drop. That's super important. Aux 3 is my beeper, and my arm switch is going to be on aux 1. Now the next tab down is the PID tuning tab, and you really don't need to change any of these numbers here on proportional, integral, and derivative. You can leave pretty much everything here stock and leave it the same. I have the super rates all set to 75. I flew it how it came out of the box, and I try to do that a lot for you guys so you can see what you get out of the box. Now, you are going to get a different experience if you decide to fly a different prop on this quad. And a lot of times I tell you guys that props make the difference on just about every single quad out there. If you have a prop that flies, I always say kind of like a dog. Yeah, because dogs don't fly. This one has a lot of pitch, and while it does have a narrow chord on the end, thicker in the middle, just has a little too much aggression there. They almost look like a flower. They're just not a very efficient prop. These are Cyclones, some of my favorite, and very durable, but not really my choice for this quad. So I would find some of the new HQ props. Those are the 3x3s, and I'll try to find you guys a link for these, because these are great. And if you have a smoother prop on board, it just smooths out everything on the flight controller. Really, it's kind of like having square tires on a car. So yeah, that's not super great. Now in the receiver tab right here, you want to have that set up to AETR, and that's the way I have it set for FR Sky. And I don't have the radio turned on right now, but we have the arm switch on aux 1, the beeper on aux 3, and my mode switch is going to be aux 2. Down to the mode switch, I have arm here, and I don't have angle and horizon active. If you want to put stability on your quad, you're going to add range for angle, and try to make that your aux 2, and you move the slider over to the first point. That'll be your switch facing all the way away from you, and that will give you angle mode. So when you're in that position, you should see that this little yellow dot right here lines up with the middle of this one here. And the same thing for horizon. If you want to add another range on your horizon, you just scooch that in just like that. Those little white tabs can scooch in. And now my middle position on that stick, that same 3-position switch, down 1 will be horizon. And if it's working correctly, when you move your switch, you should see this light up yellow when you're on angle. And when you move it to the next position, it should light up for horizon, just like that. And the third position down, just floating in space over here, there is no range to add for acro. So acro is just kind of free floating over here. Kind of strange that they never added any tab for acro, but that's the way it is. Now we're going to go down to OSD. The OSD is completely configurable in here, just like the rest of them out there. You can change it from the video format from PAL to NTSC. You can do auto. I just have it set to auto. It's completely fine in my Sky Zone, Sky O2s. And you can also drag things around on the screen if you'd like to. So that's how you reposition things. Just grab them and drag them around, and then hit save when you're done. You can also use the font manager to make the font folder. Cut. You can also use the font manager here to add your own font on your system. If you wanted to upload a font to your OSD, that's actually pretty cool. You can do that. Or you can use some of the default fonts here. You can make it bold as you want. Extra bold, Betaflight font, clarity, digital vision. There's all kinds of cool fonts there for you to change. But have fun with the OSD. That's what it's there for. Take things on or off the screen. Now let's go down to the CLI real quick and we'll type in version just to double check. Yep, Omnibus F4 SD on there and 3.5.5, January 15th, 2019. Pretty new. And the way to look at your entire settings on your TS130 is to type DUMP and hit the return button. And it's going to show you every single line saved inside your quad's flight controller memory from start to finish there. So if you'd like to save that for later, if you use this file, use this video to set up your TS130, you can save that to file. Then later, if you have a crash, you put a new flight controller on there, or you reflash it to the newest Betaflight, you can just paste the settings that were here into your new quad. Also you can do it by copying and pasting them. Just start down here below dump and select all like that. Copy it. I'll just drop it in here. And you can see it goes in. And it's rewriting it to the board. So I just rewriting my quad with the same information that's already on there, just to show you what it looks like. It's quite a bit of information. So once that's all done, it'll stop like that, and you're pretty much good to go. Okay, let's go ahead and turn on the scale. Let me give you guys some battery weights and the dry weights without the battery. So it's all zeroed out. Let's see what we get here. 146.8 grams with those HQ props, the battery strap and the receiver and everything else. Now let's go ahead and put the quad back on with the 4S850 on there. That's with that little XT30. We got 249.3 grams, so under the 250 gram mark. Isn't that cool? That's pretty awesome. And you're going to get over 3-minute flight time with that. So let's go ahead and put the larger 4S 1000 milliamp on there. That's about as big as I would go with this. You can run a 1300, but it's going to really fly super heavy. It's going to fly like a hog. So now that gets us up to a 290.9 grams. But an overall weight at 146 grams, that's not too bad. That's actually pretty good. But that's about it for my review of the TS130. You know what? I think it's a pretty cool quad. I love the way it flies. It flies like a sports car. I mean, it is definitely a muscle car. For around $130, I think it's an awesome price. I was thinking the day I flew this for you guys that we are so far ahead of where we were a couple years ago with the 130s. I feel like I should pull off the wall one of these old 130s and show you guys what they used to look like, because these things are so cool looking now. And we have smart audio, we have programmable OSD inside Betaflight, which we didn't used to have. We had to use Minim OSD to configure it outside of Betaflight, and we had to have an external module for OSD. So now it's all configured inside the flight controller for you guys. We're so spoiled these days. It's awesome. We have also a lot of new props that are coming out that are highly tested before they're sent out to the community, which is great. Some of these companies are doing a lot more R&D before they send out just a janky old prop, which is great. I think these were a little bit experimental. Not really my favorite prop in the world. This Cyclone, I'll just see if I can see the numbers on here. This was the 30, 50, 55, 56. But yeah, I love the shape of it, but it has this little flipped up tip right here. You would think that that would be a pretty smooth prop, but again, not my favorite. So in my opinion, guys, I'm going to say that the flight components on here, the overall rating for the gear on board is probably going to be like a 3.8. I know there's like 8 5-star reviews on the Banggood website. Everyone seems to love this quad. I like it a lot. I just think that the parts, the hardware is not great, okay, compared to Diatone. This is a nicer quality quad, but this one is more powerful. So yeah, you decide what you would like to get. If I was going to put my money down for either one of these quads, I would probably end up going with Diatone, because a lot of times I know what I'm getting with Diatone, and if I was going to buy the Diatone one, I would try to get the TBS Unify version of that VTX. It's going to get you a 600 milliwatt range, smart audio, and all the bells and whistles on there that you want. But overall star rating for the TS130, I think could be higher than 3.8. I think it could be about a 4.5, maybe a 4.3, but I think it's a solid bet for the money. Right now, there's not any other 130s out there that are much more powerful and fly better than the two that you see sitting here right now. You're getting a little more for your money with the Diatone R349, obviously, and a very, very awesome flying quad with the 20 amp ESC and these Mamba motors. They're excellent, excellent motors. But yeah, so that's about it for now, guys. Thank you for subscribing on the channel, and I appreciate you giving me all the kudos on the 100,000 plaque that I got just the other day. I'm going to do a reveal of that very shortly, but been a little bit sick and under the weather here lately. It's winter and everybody here has the flu. So yeah, I'm on the upslope now. I'm on the upswing, and I promise I'll do that for you guys very soon. But take care, guys. Have a good day, and hopefully you're out there flying somewhere and it's not raining or snowing where you are. Be well, guys. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one.